Hey, welcome back to Adapting. And I'm really excited for this episode, honestly.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, because you said that we're talking with JJ, right?
Yeah.
She's the friendliest person ever.
She's a ray of sunshine. She is so much fun as a human being. And she's overcome so many things. She's a really ferocious advocate. She is a very busy mom. She is, I don't know, she's a human being that I'm very glad that I have in my life. So I can't wait to share her with everybody else.
You did say that she was getting diagnosed late, right?
Yeah, in her 40s. So she's exploring some mental health diagnosis in her 40s.
I'm going to have a lot to say on this subject.
And she's an advocate for her 3 children. She's got a son who's 20 and daughters that are 14 and 10 that they're trying voraciously to get diagnoses for right now to help support them in life. And I think it's a really brave thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Like, almost no parents have, like, the bollocks to see, my child's perfect. Nothing is wrong. They're just lazy. I'm looking at you, Mom. Anyway.
I think we hear that a lot, but I think there's a lot of shame attached to it too. Like, or that you've done something wrong, or that there's a problem.
That's what my mom thought as well. When I got diagnosed, she was crying. She was like, my daughter's messed up. My dad was like, well, we have to deal with this. And that's when I said, okay, I've had this the entire bloody time, and now you decide to say there's something wrong with me? Jesus. Sometimes I think the teachers were right when they said, be better parents. Oh man, that's a really bad thing to say. They're going to watch this. I take it back. Anyway. But yeah, there is a lot of shame and stigma attached to getting your children diagnosed when you think you've done something wrong.
For sure. And I think that a lot of the blame goes to the parents too, just like you said there, though, right? Like, a lot of the blame goes, instead of it being about something that you can love up in another human being, it becomes like a deficit. It always seems to be put in a deficit way. And I'm not saying by everybody by any means, but frequently that's how people talk about it. Oh, ADHD. Oh, yikes. Autism, right? Or, oh, you have anxiety. Oh, what happened to you? Right? But I don't know. I think it makes me a pretty cool human being. I think the more I accept all of these little things about me, the cooler I become.
Yeah, honest to God, given by the stories that people have told earlier this morning, myself included, it's a part of me. Just deal with it.
Yeah, it's just something to share with the world. And I think it's a really cool thing. And the more people share their stories and the more people accept that it is a part of them and love it up in each other, then the more acceptance and beautiful our communities are going to get from there. So why don't we dive in, meet JJ and hear her story.
I can't wait.
All right, stay tuned. So before we get deep into it, who are you?
So I'm JJ, and I work at Ready, and I'm a mom, and I have been on this journey of diagnosis and living life for a while now.
It has been a while since you've been exploring all this stuff, hasn't it?
Yeah.
How long?
So my oldest is 20, and they were first diagnosed when they were in about grade 4. So that would have them be 9. So like 11, 12 years for them. And then for myself, I've only been medicated for the last year-ish. So there wasn't a process of official diagnosis for me other than fill out this questionnaire.
Damn.
Isn't it amazing how it's so much simpler when at certain stages of life
than
it is, right? Like when you're younger. Like you were talking earlier that you're going through this with your youngest and your second youngest, because you have 3 kids, right?
I do, yeah. They've all are at different stages of diagnosis. So my oldest was struggling a lot, and they would have been in it started in grade 3, actual diagnosed with ADHD in grade 4, and started being medicated. And then, so that would have been in the later 2000s. Then we got, my middle one is 14, and she is like, we started the process for her just really investigating what was going on about 18 months ago. And so she has an official diagnosis, has been medicated for maybe 6 months. And my youngest is just like, as of yesterday, starting to be investigated for ADHD. And that came about through an autism investigation.
Really?
Yeah. So my oldest that's very challenging, and we'll probably get into that on them getting a diagnosis, because just through COVID and how old they were, they aged out right around the time that a lot of things became evident. And so the transition from their from their childhood psychiatrist to, well, the non-existent adult one that they have, just means that we're 3 years into adult services and have made no progress.
That's going to be really frustrating.
Definitely, yeah. Because especially with me being constantly uprooted, I never even knew until I was 19. And I thought that me just fidgeting around, just like looking around, was just me being me. It's like, ooh, this looks cool, because I was a curious little bugger. But
that is you just being you.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a reason for you to be you, which is just different than
it's just the frustration that when I found out when I was 19, and we went to a child psychologist previously when I was like 12, and they couldn't have told me earlier, which really kind of made me a bit PO. How did you feel when you found out that you got diagnosed this late?
That really is something that I was talking about just today with somebody, about how frustrating it is and how disappointing when you look back, and how it's very validating now, because I had a lot of experiences growing up that were really challenging, and it wasn't my fault. But you don't know that. And so I spent 40 years being like, not having that type of explanation. Just, it was that you talked about it this morning, being lazy, being like, just not paying attention, you need to try, like, just try harder. Why can't you just do this? Because my brain does not work that way.
So it must be really frustrating then, seeing how at the different stages of life, how this process goes, right? Like to get one diagnosis in grade, you said 3 or 4, and then be transitioning in adulthood to get the next piece of it, and even to try to get supports, and then how simple of a process it was even for you to go and like, oh, I fill out a questionnaire and then I'm going to get some answers, right? So what does the process look like for your son then? Like as a young adult in that 20-year-old phase, what does that look like?
I think we're talking about two things, because my diagnosis was for ADHD, which he got when he was in like grade 3, 4, which was initially what we went for Maya, who's 14. So now the investigation or diagnosis that we need is for autism for my oldest kiddo. And so because they're 20, once they turned 18, then they no longer had children's services, and they had to transfer to adult services. That transition from a child psychiatrist here, like in Alberta, to the adult psychiatrist is done through your family doctor. So the psychiatrist that we had did not make a referral. We had to go to our family doctor. He made a referral, but then that referral was declined. So then we had to go back and get another one. And then that one was declined. And then, so it was a process of having to do that. All of that happened in amongst COVID. So there wasn't one, because my kid's over 18, the doctor, doctors only talk to the person, not supporting people, unless you have documentation, like supported decision-making, which we've talked about. But I couldn't go in with him. So between that and also because of COVID and they wouldn't allow 2 people in the room, I couldn't go in to help advocate. So while my kiddo's getting much better at it, they struggle to advocate and they're not able to retain all the information that's necessary and really they have to be proactive for themselves, which is really hard to do when you are a new adult and this is what you struggle with. And so it's a hard thing to do and you can't have that support to do it. So here we are 3 years later, almost in a month, and still don't have a psychiatrist because every time a referral is made, it's not accepted. So that's a whole nother issue, that there is not enough supports within the community. They're just not accepting patients. And so 3 years later, my kid has not been seen by a psychiatrist since they aged out.
That's so unfair.
Yeah.
I just remember my ADHD diagnosis and autism diagnosis being very, very different.
Were you here?
I was being assessed by a doctor all the way in Calgary, but it was over Zoom, so technically it counts. And
It was in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I just remember my ADHD diagnosis being like just a questionnaire, but my autism diagnosis was just like, okay, what is the shape, A, B, or C? And I was like, why are you giving me math problems? But all right. So yeah, I was just continuing to go through that. What did the diagnosis look like for you other than the questionnaire? Or was it just the questionnaire?
So I was diagnosed with ADHD. So it was the questionnaire. I have experience, and so I essentially advocated for myself. So I just went to my doctor and I said, I think I need an official diagnosis because I would like to be medicated. And so I completed the questionnaire and started on a dose and just increased to where I'm at now. And so that was easy. I was able to just advocate for myself. My kiddo was very much, I guess when they were originally, went through a psych ed evaluation, which you might have probably had, maybe.
We did do like a little evaluation, but it was just like him talking and my mom doing the talking for me, which was kind of rough because it was like I couldn't speak for myself because then again I was only 12, which kind of rubs me the wrong way looking back because trying to be independent when you got this going on, you tend to have I'm going to stop right there, honestly. But yeah, my mom tends to go overboard now that I got diagnosed.
I think parents do. Parents
Yeah,
do. It's hard.
It's hard to not protect and hard to not answer because we have a lot of the answers. We also don't have a lot of the answers. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to get the doctor to actually talk to your kid and listen to what they say because I don't know what's happening in there. Like that's
also I think I thought back then that the doctors didn't take kids seriously whenever they tried to talk. They'd just be like, they want the lollipop, that's it. See ya. And that kind of rubs me the wrong way. Because I'm like, they're actually trying to help out. Yeah, so that's why I'm so PO'd about the child psychiatrist that I got. Because they're like, she's functioning fine, we don't have to worry. You couldn't have told me that sooner. About my autism, for crying out loud.
It is really frustrating, especially when you've seen people and you have there's something wrong and you're trying to figure it out and it's like, no, it's okay, she's fine, she's not getting into trouble, she's quiet. I was the quiet kid. I struggled academically, but they just figured that was not because of anything else. Yeah, and so I was quiet and I didn't cause any trouble in school, and so I just kept getting pushed through and I graduated and moved on.
Yep. The same thing happened to me. I didn't even know.
So what difference has it made for you then? So you said a year ago, this kind of came forward for you. What difference has it made for you now that you have that piece? And I'm a person, honestly, I hate labels so much. And I think that piece of a diagnosis makes such a big difference. right? Because that one little thing, someone always says, "Oh, I wish there was a magic pill that could fix this." I'm like, "Oh well, I need part A to get to part B so that I can feel better." So how has that impacted you? Like, how has that process impacted you now that you have this piece of information in your life?
In some ways, it's really good. It was very validating, and there's been a lot of like emotional healing that's happened for myself, just because there is a lot of the shame and not knowing when you don't know. And then once you do know, then you can kind of start piecing things together and how things went and the results of that and how your life has changed, which can be really difficult because when you look back over 25, 30 years, if I had had half of the supports that my kids have available to them now, when I was a kid, like, where would my life be? What would I be doing? How much different and potentially more comfortable could it be than it is now? Because I'm starting out at like in my 40s at like a level right now where my kiddo is at 20 in like the figuring out my personal life, like who I am. So that's one side. And then now I forget the question. There was a second half.
Okay.
First half was what?
How has it changed now that you've had that piece of, like, since you got that information, that label, what has changed in your world?
I guess there's all the personal growth is there, but then also like some things are much more difficult because, I really lost my train of thought.
It happens. It's okay.
Yeah, it happens more often.
It's a judgment-free zone.
It is. It's been very hard coming to terms with different things. That's been so, like, walking through that while still parenting and having a job and like having to maintain life. That's challenging. But then there's also the growth. That is really great. So that is not at all what I was going to say before, but
that's okay.
That's what I got.
But so has the medication made a difference though? Like, does it give you space to process easier?
It does. So certainly, like, work-wise, it allows me to like process and be able to be a better employee, a better mom. It has astronomically changed things in my ability to focus. And that it happens over time because it takes time to increase. And my doctor's like, you're done. You're maxed out. You can't take any more. And so but I'm comfortable where I'm at. And I feel like it allows me to do the things that I want to do and really have the focus that I need to have, which apparently I don't have today.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. You know, I felt the same, like when I got diagnosed, so I have like major anxiety, and I didn't know all of these things in my life stemmed from anxiety until I got medicated. And then I was like, it was like a light switch went off, and I thought, holy smokes, like, oh, I do this because I'm anxious, or my brain doesn't stop because this is part of like this crazy thinking, right down to this thing called anxiety tongue, where you get like the sucking motion in your mouth when you're really anxious. And I couldn't figure out why I always had my tongue was always sore at the back and my throat was sore, and it was from anxiety. All these weird little things popped up that made me understand myself so much better.
That make you that you're not crazy. That you, like, there's a reason why you do these things or don't do these things. Absolutely. Okay, so I thought of two things. One, since in my journey of being diagnosed, the more I have learned and recognized of like all the things that I did, the less I can do, the less I can handle on my plate. And so that's been a big adjustment, because in the last year, I've gone from like this super mom does all the things, is what people would say, to like I am just functioning in our own world and looking after the immediate needs that we have. That's it. And that's a massive shift from where I was at. But the more you learn about what's on your plate, the smaller the plate got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
You use an analogy all the time I hear you say about spoons.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell me about this spoon piece? Because I think that when you told me about it, and okay, so selfishly, you're not telling me about it. I want to tell everybody about it because there's this thing about spoons. And when you told me the first time, I thought, oh, this really makes sense to me. And it really gave me permission. So would you share the spoons with us?
So this makes me emotional, Robin.
I'm so sorry.
No,
I'm not sorry.
It's a good thing.
So
Don't
good.
be sorry. Okay. So do you know?
Have you heard about the
spoon theory?
spoons?
I know that spoon in a spoon drawer.
No. Okay. So spoon
This
theory
is cool.
is essentially every person gets up and has the same number of spoons. So, you can go either way. They have the same number of spoons, but it costs them more, or you have a different number of spoons. It's probably easier to say that you have a different number of spoons. So I get up in the morning and I have 8 spoons. Robin might get up in the morning. She's got 12 spoons. And somebody else, you might get up and have 3 spoons. Okay. So essentially the spoon theory is that because we have different number of spoons, we can handle different amounts of things. So if I only have 8 spoons to work with, getting up and get dressed, that takes a spoon. Eating breakfast, that's probably at least 2 spoons for me because I don't eat breakfast. Let's be real. Eating anything takes 2 spoons for me. So how many is that? Okay.
I'll be your spoon counter.
Okay. So I got to get up and get dressed.
Yep.
Breakfast, some kind of food.
Yep.
That's 2 spoons. I go to work. That's going to be another probably 3, maybe 4 spoons, depending on the day that I have. Then I have to go home and I have to feed not only myself. Oh yeah, I had to feed myself lunch. That does.
Is that another 2
Sure.
spoons?
Probably another 2 spoons. So then I have to feed my kids. That's 3 spoons. Then
I'm out of fingers.
Dance.
I'll do
Yeah.
the rest.
Okay.
So then we have dance. Then we have bedtime. And then I have to get myself to bed and finish whatever it is probably at least, we'll give that 2 because I stopped adding more than 1. So what are we at?
16.
16
spoons. So I started with 8. That means that I have an 8 deficit for the next day. But the next day, I also only have 8 spoons. So my life it's more spoons that I've got. Okay. People who are neurotypical don't necessarily have they don't have a limitation on the number of spoons that they have. Or getting up and getting ready is like they get up, they get ready, they have breakfast, 1 spoon. They go to work, that's 1 spoon. They come home, make dinner, 1 spoon. They do their evening activities like running their kids wherever, that's 1 spoon. How many are we at? 5?
Yes.
Okay.
So
That's
I
1
forgot
spoon.
that I was saving track. Wake
That's
up,
1 spoon?
Go to work, make supper, do what they have to do. What was the other one you said?
Drive around.
That was the do they have. So we're at 4 spoons.
We're at 4 spoons.
Okay, they got 4 spoons, and that's like they put their kids to bed. 5. So they now have a surplus of 3 spoons, right? Mm-hmm. If you go with the 8 spoons a day. So I have an 8 spoon deficit. They have a 3 spoon surplus. So they probably will do some laundry, maybe mow the lawn. They might paint their living room. They might they could do any number of things because they've got all these extra spoons to use. I just to get through the day have a deficit.
So there's no time to fill your spoon.
So spoon theory there's a lot of components to it, but essentially it comes down to a way to measure energy throughout the day. So lots of times, and it comes up where I'm like, I don't have spoons for that. And I've shared it a lot at work because in fact, I put it in the blurb. There's a limitation to what we've got. And not everybody understands that. And particularly neurotypical people because they don't operate with that limited amount of capacity, that's just foreign. If you've never ever been hungry in your life, the idea that people are starving is so foreign. It's like you don't understand it. It's the same thing with energy. If you've never not had the ability to move forward in your life, it's something that's really hard to quantify and to understand. So spoon theory isn't like an actual theory, and I probably butchered it horribly, but essentially that's it.
I think that
In a
makes
nutshell.
total sense though.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think we all have times in our life that we go through and it's like, oh yeah, like actually I had a day 2 weeks ago, getting out of bed, that was going to take all of my spoons that day. And normally it wouldn't, but it was a fight. But then I do have those days where I have extra spoons, right? So I can create that balance, that recovery time, right? But for a lot of people, there's not that piece of it. And I think that's a really important thing to remember too, especially when you're trying to advocate for other people or educate other people, right? Just respecting where people are. And that they don't always have that, oh, well, it's just going to take 5 minutes. Actually, my brain can't do 5 minutes right now.
Yep.
Yeah. I try to, ever since my parents before my parents diagnosed me, since I'm the eldest, expectations are higher than the Empire State Building. Ever since I got diagnosed, right down to a bungalow. Mainly because,
reasonable though.
yes. Mainly because British parents have such high expectations of their kids because it's like a formal household. But whenever my parents gave me high expectations, I was like, oh, come on, give me a expletive break. Now that when I got diagnosed, my parents would often say, Kirah, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. And I'd just be having my face in the pillow, just like, thumbs up, see ya. I just don't want to waste my spoons too early. And to be honest, I'm with Robin on this one. Getting out of bed is a fight. But mainly because I'm too cozy. That's a problem.
But I think that goes along with just like on your trip, you're talked about your dream, right? You still have your dream of going to film, but changing that, how it fits better to you,
Yeah.
right? I think that's really good awareness too.
For the people who don't know, I went to England. And the traffic there is insane. And it's on the left side of the road instead of the right. I had to change a lot of my future plans just because one trip to England drove me completely crazy. So,
and I think it's a fit, right? It's about finding fit for everything. I want to take this whole, now we kind of talk about spoons, I want to take this whole thing back a little bit too, with your oldest child trying to get into supports and being in a space till you, because there is no decision maker paperwork, which is also a process to get decision maker paperwork. I'm going through this with my mom. It happens, but it is expensive. You need a lawyer, you need all of these things in it, right? So in this space that's kind of off in between, how did your son work with that piece of trying to go to those appointments by himself and try to navigate all of that piece? And was there any way that you could support or advocate through that? I know, because he didn't have the spoons to do that.
Yeah.
Right? So was there any way that you were able to advocate through that and be of support through that?
I think the biggest thing that I was able to do was be on the phone, which was not it's not ideal, but it was the closest we could get. So I would coach, but I would drive them there. I would coach them on what it was that they needed to say. And then if they needed the support in the appointment, then they would phone me. And otherwise so I sat quietly on the phone through a couple of appointments. They're not a fan of that though. That's not very well received because again, I'm not the patient. And so they're able to advocate for themselves. They don't require someone else to be able to the only reason we would need that or would investigate that would be because they won't allow us to not. If the patient brings someone with them, they're providing consent to have that be included in that conversation. Can I call and just be like, hey, well, no, that's not reasonable. However, there is a reasonable expectation that if I'm sitting in the room, they obviously would like me to be there. That's very frustrating. So really being on the phone, that was the biggest thing. one of the psychiatrists, we did get a referral to one psychiatrist. And when they went there, they had this documentation to fill out. So I'm in the van on the phone helping my kiddo fill out the documentation because they have no idea how to answer any of the questions. So that takes a ridiculous amount of time. And then they go into the appointment and come out like 10 minutes later. And the psychiatrist had said, "Why did you not bring your mom with you?" And my kiddo was like, "Because I didn't think I was allowed to." Because prior to that, the doctor had said I wasn't allowed to go because they were an adult. And so then we rebooked the appointment, and it was not a stellar appointment, and we won't be visiting that psychiatrist again.
So it sounds like there's a lot of little pieces of information that are inconsistent when trying to navigate that transition.
Yeah.
Too.
There is very much. And just because you get a referral, so when we would go in, my kiddo would go in, they would request the referral and then be like, come back in 6 months. So then or in 6 weeks. So you go back in 6 weeks, to find out that it was declined. So then have to wait another 6 weeks for the next one. And then in there, they really were struggling. And I had called and asked if there was any way that they could come and get in for an appointment beforehand because they were really struggling and they wouldn't make it the whole month to be able to be seen. And they said no, that they couldn't get in earlier. They put them on a waiting list. The day before, they ended up in the hospital. So they were in the hospital for a week. And initially when they went in, then there was conversation where they won't get out. There'll be a meeting with all the hospital staff and then new psychiatrists. And there'll be a group meeting before they're discharged. And then I got a phone call at 2 p.m. Can you come get me? Because I've been discharged. And there was no meeting. They still didn't have a psychiatrist. So then they were sent back to the family doctor who said, get a referral from them. So another 6 weeks to get that appointment, for them to send it to somebody else. Another 6 weeks to find out that it was declined. And then was told, you need to find your own. I don't know how you do that because you need a referral from a doctor to get a psychiatrist. So I think that was the last time they requested a referral. They've been to walk-in, got a referral, it was declined. There's probably been 6, 7 referrals, and all of them have been declined.
Do you get any reasons for that, or it's just declined?
Nope.
Interesting.
That's so unfair, honest to God.
Yeah, I really don't know. You and I have talked about different things and different options, but having the resources and then having the capacity to be able to navigate what you're supposed to do when and waiting for appointments and all of that is really overwhelming.
Do you think you have better capacity for all of that since your medication has been kind of?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
Yes.
I do. But
he
also
maybe doesn't.
Yeah. It has to be, he's medicated, but he doesn't have the life experience to be able to formulate this and this and this and this. He's still learning how to do, this is how you have to navigate life.
Adulting is hard.
It is.
It's something you need to learn.
It is, definitely.
So I know we're running out of time, but I really wanted to talk about, because you mentioned that your daughter, just before we started, that your daughter you've been working on for 18 months to get information. So is that for, what diagnosis is for that? So we talked about that an ADHD diagnosis has been pretty simple, but.
Yeah. So initially, there was a catalyst to bring all the investigation on. So we were referred then from the family doctor to the child psychiatrist. When we saw the child psychiatrist, there was a number of diagnoses that were made, but then also for the autism investigation, we were referred to a clinic that it's a behavioral clinic in town, which is really quite cool. So that took a bit to get that process in, but their process itself is like a couple of months long. Yeah. So we went from the family doctor to the psychiatrist to a
behavioral clinic.
It was a pediatric. It's not a podiatrist. A pediatric doctor, pediatrician. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm here. So to a pediatrician that specializes in like higher needs kids. So went there for assessment to see whether or not it was warranted for them to go to the behavioral clinic for assessment. So we went to her, then she referred us to the behavioral clinic. So they've done their process, go back to the pediatrician who says the results are inconclusive. So she needs to meet in person with all the assessors to have the conversation because she's 14. And a lot of the things with teenage hormones and things overlap with autism and emotional regulation. And like there's just an overlap. It's more difficult to diagnose at the age that she's at. So that meeting, she needed to do that. That happened before summer, where she told us that. So the end of September, my other daughter was supposed to have an appointment. So she piggybacked on that, except they didn't actually have the meeting until today. Yesterday was the appointment. So we still didn't get her results for whether or not she has autism. However, my other one, instead of going through my pediatrician to the family doctor, psychiatrist, I went straight to the behavioral clinic because you can self-refer. You just have to get a referral. So doctor got a direct referral to that, to the behavioral clinic, did all of the same assessments, then that gets sent to the same pediatrician. So that was the appointment we had yesterday. Also, her assessment was not conclusive. However, for the autism, she scored on the no side, like lower part, but opened the door for potentially ADHD because there's a lot of overlap between ADHD and autism. So I filled out more documentation. Now the next appointment that she had available is like the third week in November. So we wait till then from here.
So let me just see if I have this right. So for your teenage daughter, you kind of have to jump through a whole piece. But now that you know the information of how to get into that behavioral clinic, that was a much simpler thing. So do you think that this information, like, would you recommend to somebody, like if they're trying to get this through this process, like, do you have any advice for someone who's trying to go through it so that maybe they don't have to jump through 18 months worth of struggle?
I think, truly, I did actually suggest the behavioral clinic, which is Children's Allied Health, it's in the hospital. With that referral, which you can go to walk-in to get, anybody can make the referral to go there for the assessment, opens the door straight to a pediatrician because they collaborate with, I think they have like 5 pediatricians that they work with. So then you're assigned to one of them. So then you have someone who specializes in pediatric mental health. And that's a reminder that I have to go somewhere and do something. That in itself would be like a direct line to be, okay, this is where you need to go and what you need to do. Children's supports are much easier to navigate than the adult ones. Much, much easier. And so they were the ones that told me, to get the autism diagnosis as a kid is relatively easy because they do the assessments at that clinic and then you get your diagnosis and you move forward. Then you're put in contact with other supports within the community to support your kiddo. Once you turn 18 though, to get the actual assessment, it's like 5 years. There's like a massive waiting list. It's very expensive.
Do you have an idea of what that cost is?
It was upwards of like $10,000.
Whoa!
Just recently there's been some things that have been shuffled, and I believe it's possibly in the 3 to 5, but I don't I haven't, like, I don't have the information
No,
for that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. Just curious.
But it's still expensive. So one of the assessments that like my kiddo needs to have is like $2,000.
For your son.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. Because they're 18. So had that been done and been investigated before they turned 18, then it would have been a very different process.
So I think something from what you're saying that really sticks out to me is that as a parent, when we see things, even though, like you kind of mentioned some things around shame and all of that, right? Because it can be really difficult. Like, it's really hard to sit back as a parent and think, oh gosh, like, did I do something wrong? Am I thinking about this too much? Parenting is really difficult work. There's a lot of feelings involved in that. However, through that process, that if you even suspect it, that it can be a really big gift to your child to start that process.
Absolutely.
When they're younger.
Absolutely. And I think things are shifting, even like within education, within society, that there isn't the shame and the stigma that there once was. Like, my experience is so vastly different than what your experience would be compared to even like my 20-year-old compared to my 10-year-old.
Yeah.
That experience is very different. And so it's important. And I think educators as well are paying more attention, and like your teachers were the ones that advocated and said, like, possibly you could investigate that.
Well, it was my college educator that noticed, because she's worked with autism people before. It's just that my teachers back at the Ralston School in high school would say, she's not paying attention, maybe you guys should be better parents. And I'm just like, rough?
Yeah,
but then that's why my mom and dad came down so hard on me.
It is really a struggle, and it's really a struggle. And as a parent, you don't want to mess your kid up. So you want to do the best that you can do to guide them and teach them to be successful in what they're doing. And you really can only go off of what you know. So what your parents would have experienced when they were growing up and what you're supposed to do is vastly different than now what we're learning is much more effective.
Well, they did grow up in England, so...
And that would be very different than here as well. So it is, parenting is hard, and adulting is hard, and it's just extra hard when there's challenges.
As Monica Geller says in Friends, welcome to the real world. It sucks. You're going to love it.
All right, so we've probably gone over our time, but I just want to give you a chance to say, because I think you've done some incredible advocacy for yourself and for your children. And while you're battling your own journey, right, to be working through all of that stuff without half the information in play and to go through everything you're going through, I think that you're a really remarkable human being and a really remarkable mom. So what would you share to other parents who are maybe in this rumble of trying to figure things out for themselves, or they don't feel quite right themselves, or they think they see something with their children? What would be your advice? Or your encouragement?
It's okay. It is okay to not have the answers, and somebody you know does. So the more you talk about it, and like, I'm a pretty open person, which is probably the only reason I've made it as far as I have, because I share the things. And so then people come into my life and they're like, hey, why don't, like, I have this connection, or what about this? So for people who are struggling themselves, it's okay. And there's nothing wrong with you. And you can do hard things. You've done hard things for a long time. You're allowed to find things to make it easier. It's not cheating. It's not an easy way. It's not an easy way out. It's just makes the field a little bit more level. Yeah. And talk to your kids' teachers. And if you don't get the answer you want, keep talking to them, because they know it's challenging for them as educators. They're not allowed to say certain things. So when they say they'll skirt around things. If you have any thoughts, if you straight up ask them, they'll tell you. But otherwise, they can't say a lot. So just be open and no shame.
No shame.
No shame.
Definitely no shame.
No, there is nothing to be shameful about.
Awesome.
That's hard.
Thanks for
I
sharing,
got it.
JJ.
Yeah, thanks a bunch.
Thank you for having me.
I'm definitely going to look at spoons differently.
Right? It's a cool theory.
To be honest, I waste like 20 spoons a day. I only have 4.
Yeah, for me, I think it depends on the day. Like it varies. Some days I wake up and I'm like, yes, I love everything. I've slept well. I feel like $1,000,000. I feel like I can do absolutely anything I want to, right? And on those days, I probably have 50 spoons. However, I probably end up spending all of my spoons for the week in that day because the next day I might not be able to get out of bed.
Yeah. It's like, a day is going to be bad and you just don't want to get up. But then you have to because things are happening and you don't want to look like a narc. Then you're like, I'm too cozy, give me 5 minutes, and it turns out to be an hour. So I know the feeling all the time. My bed is too cozy and it's a problem.
I have a 1 snooze rule, but when I was working with a counselor, they told me, okay, so there's certain things that you push yourself to do every single day, and I stick to this now, and I use spoons for it. And I think the more of a habit I've gotten into it, I use less of my daily spoons. Like every day I wake up, making the bed is negotiable. I actually make the bed before I go to sleep at night, and then have a shower. And those are the non-negotiables. You get out of bed in the morning and you have a shower, and then we see what happens from there. So
the non-negotiables for me is skip breakfast. Weight loss is like a non-negotiable thing for me. It's like keep an eye on the calories, Giles, that kind of thing.
Yeah, to be healthy, right? That's fair. I think something that I really think is incredible about JJ's story and just her being is that asking for help, those 4 little letters seem to be such a hard thing to do.
Yeah, no one wants help. Nobody. Because they think that they're so strong that they can do this on your own.
Yeah, like
Nobody's
it's a weakness.
that strong. Heck, even God can't create a pizza so big, even he can't lift it.
I think a really cool thing about it is though that so asking for help, that's another thing that we see as a deficit, right? And at the same time, it's such a strength. Like being able to ask for help for things, I know it's difficult, but it can be such a strength. Look how much has happened for JJ, how much extra support she's been able to get for herself and for her children through all that process.
Yeah, that's beyond incredible. The fact that she's been able to ruthlessly advocate for her children as well as herself is just...
And the change in asking for help, like seeing the doctors and getting that help, doing the assessments has made for her life. I think it's a really powerful thing.
Definitely.
I think that's something we put on ourselves, and I know I sure did as a parent, like, I don't need help for anything. But it made such a difference when I started accepting help from other people.
Mm-hmm. My dad told me grow a backbone at like 10 years old. I want to grow a backbone. Then the next day my mom says, it's okay to ask for help. Make up your minds.
Well, both things can be true though, right? We can be strong and advocate and stand up for ourselves. And in advocating for ourselves, there's a way to ask for help too, right?
When I confronted my dad about it that day, he said, maybe asking for help is the strongest thing you could do.
Yeah.
And I took that to heart, so now I'm not afraid to, for example, raise my hand when I'm struggling with something, or feel free to help others without even asking.
Yeah. So what's something that you took from JJ? What is something that you'll not forget about JJ?
That's spoons theory. I'm going to look it up later because I want it written down and published.
She did say that she thinks she butchered it. I don't think she butchered it. So I encourage everybody to look up spoon theory.
And the other thing about, her way of getting support was just a questionnaire compared to her children. That's just unfair in general. Because whenever a referral gets declined, it reminded me of my job interviews. Decline, just because I so happen to have one outlying detail.
And it's sad that it's just never a reason why, so things can change, right? Knowledge is power. I think it's a really difficult thing. It's a hard thing to navigate the healthcare system. It's a hard thing to navigate all systems, I think, in general. She did mention something that, and I learned this through my illness journey. So I know that lots of times you can't have someone come in to a doctor's appointment, or certain doctor's appointments, they don't let you do that. In Alberta, we have this thing called My Care Conversations, and it's an app you can download on your phone, and it's specifically for doctor's appointments. So if you're going to a medical appointment of any kind and you can't have someone with you, or you don't think you can remember everything that's being said, you get a little overwhelmed, you can just let the doctor know that you'd like to use My Care Conversations, and you're allowed to record your appointments so that you can listen to them later and understand it. And I think it's a really, really powerful tool for people that need that extra support. Maybe they don't have someone else in their life, or they don't have someone to go with them. So if that's you, if that's something that falls into your life, I really encourage you to look at My Care Conversations as an app on your phone. It made a huge difference in my world to be able to understand all the details that happen. It's a great resource, and it's free. So again, those resources come in handy, especially when you're in that limbo phase. She talked a lot about being in limbo with her son's transition in adulthood, being in limbo with supports and that. So I think lots of people could use that.
My being in limbo was like right after I got diagnosed, honestly, because it was like the stigma, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I need sleep. So
yeah, it can be exhausting. But all in all, I think I'm really glad that we got to have a chat with JJ today. I'm glad you got to meet her. She is really one of my favorite people.
You did say she was a ray of sunshine. Definitely didn't disappoint.
Right? She is a ray of sunshine. And she shows up the same everywhere. I love that about her. And the more she learns about herself and loves on herself, it shows up even more.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we've met some really great people so far. I guess we've got another one coming up next week. So
yeah.
Stay tuned. Don't be shy. Keep adapting. I'm Robin Keenan.
And I'm Kirah Giles. We'll see you next time.
Take care.